And the title of my message today is Just Walk to the Stream. Just walk to the stream. A couple weeks ago, when I was in Missouri, and I flew back to be with my family for this wedding, and I got, do you ever go back and you see family you haven't seen for a really long time, and you're like, wow, we're related. You know what I mean? Like, you just have that thing where it's like you'd almost forgot, you haven't seen them in a long time, and you'd kind of forgotten, and and you're just like, this is a part of my gene pool. Like, I can't deny that we even look similar, but I blocked out that we were a part of the same thing, And so I was at this wedding, and then afterwards at the reception, I'm there with my daughter, and if you know Tegan, she was out on the dance floor, had cake rubbed all over her face, and she was busting a move, and I can't keep up with her. And so I was standing to the side, and this guy in my family comes up, and he corners me. And I say corners me because I wanted to escape, but I could not. He trapped me there, and he starts telling me about how he's getting ready. He's going to do this cycling adventure. He's going to do this race, and it's not really about time. It's just about like something that he's going to do for him, and he's getting ready, and he's going to get this bike, and it goes from one side of the state to the other side of the state, and he's going to go from one place to the next, and it's going to take him 3 days, and he's really excited, and he's been doing all the research, and he's been thinking about it, and he's ramping up, and it's going to happen. It's right around the corner. And as he was telling me this, I had a flashback to 10 years before, when he said the exact same thing to me at a family reunion. A decade before, same exact spiel, right? Where I'm like, did he memorize it? Is this from a movie that I don't know about? Like, what? He's telling me it was the same thing. He's about to gonna do it. You know what I mean? Because he's from Missouri, so that's why you throw some extra words in there that don't belong. I'm about to gonna do it. I'm fixing to, you know what I mean? I'm like, you've been fixing to do this for a decade, man. Like, so you're telling me you are going to go from from all the way across the state on a bicycle, and have you been on a bicycle? When was the last time you're on a bicycle? He's like, I haven't been, I've read a lot about it. I saw, and then he told me he saw a documentary about Lance Armstrong. I was like, well, you're ready then. You're definitely ready. You saw that Netflix documentary about blood doping, so what more would you need to do or practice, whatever? And when you're in the midst of tragedy or something horrible that's happened in your life, the filter that's normally intact, because you're like a good, respectable, pastor, it comes off a little bit, right? And I just was fighting so hard not to just want to shake this guy and just be like, just do something, just start, right? You want to go from state line to state line. How about from this line on the sidewalk in front of your house to this line on the sidewalk in front of your house? It's like 12 feet away with the bike that you already have, okay? Like, how many? You have 5 pairs of cycling shorts, okay? You don't need 5. You have so many. You've tried all of the energy gels. You've not done anything that I'm aware of in the past 10 years that requires energy. I don't know what you're doing with this. You get going, man. Just do something. Like, I don't want to be at the next family event with you and get trapped over by the cake again, and you tell me the same story, because at that point, I will shake you, okay? Like, I will shake you, and I will tell you some things, and then people just be like, he's lost his mind. He's lost his mind. I listened to a podcast one time. I knew this day was coming, right? They're going to be able to predict it. And if you were to think about it, I would guess that you probably know some people like this in your life. Do not point to them if they're here. Don't nudge them. Don't make it weird. No eye contact. Just look up here, okay? It's like we're not even talking about them, okay? But we are. We know we are. Like, right? You and me know we are. But not only, I think, do we know people like this, we are people like this, right? And this is what the person next to you, why they want to nudge you right now. Because you're thinking, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much like that. And they're like, this is you. You know what I mean? Because we when we're thinking about our lives, we like to think of the examples where we're killing it, like where we're really taking ground and where we really follow through. But when we think of other people, we're just like, well, they don't, you know what I mean? Come on, they've been saying that forever. Because this is kind of how we do, right? Like, and I wonder if you're like me in that you are an expert at rational stall tactics, right? Like if there's anything I feel like I'm amazing at, it is that, right? Like I can come up with the perfect reason why it's just not a good time for me. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to work out right now. And I think a lot of us, we have this vision of who we want to be, maybe even if we've never articulated it before. And we probably even have a rough idea of maybe what we need to do in order to get there, or to become that kind of a person. It's just, we're also aware that to do those things, it's going to be challenging. Right? It's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be probably embarrassing because we're not going to be good right away. We've never done it. It's going to look awkward. It's going to look like people are going to be like, who do you think you are? What are you doing? Like that's not how, that's not even a piece of exercise equipment. Okay, that's paint scaffolding. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to be in there moving around, but and you don't know what you're doing, and you're afraid of that moment. And so if you're like me, you just keep pushing back the start date. But for me, like it's not an excuse, because I'm researching. That's really what I'm. Did you give like special names to like your excuses too? I'm researching. I'm doing I'm in the planning phase. I'm in a planning phase. I'm strategizing. Okay, I'm strategizing. I'm mentally preparing myself. I'm doing some visualizing techniques. Okay, I'm getting ready inside, right? Because you got to make sure that you got all the right equipment. You know what I mean? Like you got the right stuff. You have the proper supplies. You have the appropriate outfit. Okay? You can't be just going out there with what you already have. You got to get the special ensemble. Okay? Everything you want to do has an outfit you need to wear. And sometimes you're going to have to get 2 or 3 of them. Okay? You don't know. You want to try it out. You want to be sure that you have the perfect plan of attack before you start attacking. You can't just charge in there. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of times I'm like, I need to know the details of the 58th step before I take the first step, because I want to make sure that when I get there, I'm ready, right? And do you do this? And the people around me are just like, it's going to take like 7 years to hit step 58. Maybe just like baby step that one. Maybe just ride the bike from crack to crack. You know what I mean? Like maybe we just get rolling, get started at first. And I think the trouble with a lot of us is, we can get so obsessed with plotting the perfect thing that we never get around to doing much of anything. And there is a huge difference between preparation and action. And sometimes, these things merge together. And we think because we've prepared or are preparing that we have somehow taken action. But these are different, right? Let me give you the definition of what these two things entail. Preparation is the planning phase, okay? It's researching, it's learning, it's strategizing, and it is essential. You do need to do this, right? You need to make sure that you know what you're getting into. We live in the information age, though. It is so easy to overdo this, right? And most of us do. And even in our overdoing, it doesn't feel like enough, right? Because we're delaying the next phase, which is action, which is the doing phase, right? It's in the actual behavior that's going to deliver the outcome that you're looking for. And part of the reason why we get trapped in the cycle is doing enough preparation can actually trick you into thinking you've already taken action. You ever do that? You're like, I swear, I feel like I've started because I've been thinking about it so much, you guys. Like so much, okay? Like I have watched that Netflix documentary like 5 times. So I feel like I've done the whole 30. You know what I mean? Like it feels like I've already, taken action because of look at all this preparation, right? It allows us, and what it does is preparation, especially when we really throw ourselves into it, it allows us to feel like we're making progress without actually running the risk of failure. Because we can design and redesign the perfect plan over and over again, and we can know exactly the best thing to do and how to do it. But as long as we don't actually get involved and start walking out the path, we don't run the risk of tripping and falling on our face. We don't run the risk of messing up. or of not being as great, or it not working or getting the results that we wanted at first. We can kind of be safe. We're insulated by our endless planning. But I think oftentimes our preparation is just another form of procrastination. We're just stalling. And if we want to make progress in our lives with who we feel like God has called us to be, like we're going to have to stop our over-planning. We're going to have to start doing something. And I want to illustrate this today by talking through this story from the life of David. And we've been looking at this Old Testament character, David, all throughout this series and talking about examples from his life and just the way in which he orchestrated habits that really defined who he became as a person, as a leader. And we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 48 to start. And then we're going to kind of flash back and flash forward and kind of move around and make some observations. But I want to give you some context for what we're about to look at together. What is happening here is that David, his country is at war, and so he's an Israelite, and so the nation of Israel is at war, and they're kind of at a stalemate. And what has happened is they have this archenemy, the Philistines, and they're fighting back and forth a lot over the course of history. And at this moment, they're cowering in fear of this reputable enemy warrior whose name is Goliath, and he's the legend has it that he was just like larger than normal, and he was undefeated, and he was just enormously threatening and intimidating. And basically the war had come down to this. Instead of just fighting it out, they were just like, let's just reduce it. Let's make it simple. Let's make it a duel between the best warrior that you have, the best warrior that we have, and whoever wins that battle, we're gonna sign a contract saying whoever wins this battle, like they win it all. That's it. It's over at that point. And so if you guys win, like we'll surrender everything. You can have everything we have. We'll be your slaves. But if we win, it's the reverse is true. We get your cities, your gold. We get all your resources. Your people submit to our rules and laws. And so there's a lot at stake here, and nobody on the Israelite in the Israelite army wants to step up. And I think a lot of times this is cast in the light of that these people are scared to die. I don't think that's really what it is. I think what it is that nobody wants the fate of their entire country hinged upon one singular moment in which they're going to fight to the death. Because what's at risk is not just your life, but the future of your family, your friends, your country, everyone you know. Like no matter how competent you think you are and how much confidence you think you have, this is a high stakes game. Who wants that kind of pressure? Who wants to be known as the person that goes down in the history book as like, man, they seem really confident and they went out there and they were like, yeah, you got to have faith in me, and that's why we're all slaves today. Right? Like that, nobody wants that. And so everyone's cowering, and David, he's a boy at the time, he's still a shepherd. He's been anointed king, but he's just still like shepherding. Like some people know who he is, a lot of people don't. And he ends up at this battlefield because he's bringing supplies to the front lines because his brothers are fighting. His dad sends him to run this errand, and he gets there, and he kind of becomes, this is pre-internet, right? So he becomes aware of what's going on. When he gets there, he's like, oh, this is crazy. This is happening. What's going on with that guy? And they tell him, and his first impulse is he's just like, let me fight him. I got this. Like I'll go out there. I'll make it happen. And again, this is an enormous amount of confidence. This isn't just saying like, I'm not afraid to die. This is saying like, trust me, place the entire fate of our nation and people in my hands. Trust me. I'm 12. I've got this. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of skepticism, right? There's a lot of skepticism around maybe whether they should let this kid do this and if this is the right move. He has no military experience, right? And this is what happens. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 48. It says that as Goliath moved closer to attack, this is a moment of truth, David quickly ran out to meet him, right? He's so unafraid that he runs toward the fight, towards the unbeatable person, right? Like this is, if you know my youngest son, Zeke, this is him, right? He's like this short, like kid, and like he will run towards any fight, right? And he's just like, he's got a little bit of that Napoleon complex where he's just like, let me out, I got it. And he just like sprints out, and like that's a little alarming in and of itself. You're like, does he know he's too small for this? What's happening right now? It's like there's a weird kind of fear, like when you're facing someone who's fearless, right? And so he sprints out towards the battle. It says, verse 49, reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in. What a graphic and unnecessary detail that we were given here. And Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. And this is an amazing thing. It would have been incredible to watch. And I think a lot of times we read something like this, and our first knee-jerk reaction is like, wow, what a miracle. But the question I want to ask today is, was it? Like, was it a miracle in the way that we think maybe it was? Because I think that there is this human tendency, like, to think of any accomplishment that we find amazing and impressive because, we're just like, we can't imagine that we could ever do it. We don't know anybody else who could do it. We tend to think of that thing as it must be a miracle. And I want to say for the record that there is no doubt that God is at work here. But I think that there is so much more depth to the story than that simplistic explanation of like, I guess it must have just been a miracle. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of clues here, but especially if you rewind a little bit and you look at the conversation that leads up to this seemingly miraculous moment. 1 Samuel chapter 17, so same chapter. Just scroll back to verse 32. This is the conversation after he's just like, I got it, I'll go fight him. Verse 32 is David talking. He says, don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous. Saul replied, there's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy. Now, if this kid is anything like Zeke, that just sets him off even more like, oh, I'm really going to do it now. Right? And he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said, and when a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it. So he's been running towards fights for a long time, this kid, right? And I rescue the lamb from its mouth. And if it turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. Again, very graphic, the Old Testament. Also, who is this kid, right? He's just like, he runs at a bear and then he's fighting the bear and the bear's kind of winning, and so then he's just like, I'm just going to grab his jaw and then just beat it to death with a baseball bat. Like, what in the world? This is crazy, right? He says, I've done this to both lions and bears. Plural. Multiple times he has done this. Which, again, as a father makes me think like, where is CPS? Who is doing this? Allowing this for a child. You're just like, yeah, you're 8. There's, we're going to give you this, meat dressed up in sweaters and just put it out there on the field. And you can just look out for it. There's a bunch of bears out there and tons of lions. Good luck. You know what I mean? May the Lord be with you. So he says, I've done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he's defiled the armies of the living God. So he has like kind of this value system, this moral code that he lives by that's been insulted. And he says, the Lord rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear, and he'll rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said. I imagine he's chuckling while he's doing this, just like, this kid is crazy, right? May the Lord be with you, right? He's just like, good luck, buddy. Can we get a priest in here? I don't know, this kid's going to die. Verse 38, it says, Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped on the sword. He took a step or two to see what it was like, and he's never worn such things before. Now think about this for a minute. He ends up taking all this stuff off and just going out there with a sling. And if this is, like, what happens next, what we read before, if this moment is purely miraculous and has nothing to do with David's skills or experience, what does it matter how he's dressed? What does it matter what weapon he uses? What does it matter whether or not he can move easily? Because it does matter. Like David, I really do think that David was destined to kill Goliath. I think he was destined to do it a certain way. Because Like Liam Neeson, he had a very particular set of skills, okay? He had, with a certain set of tools, right? He had honed them over time. And God was on his side, but he also knew that his best chance at scoring a victory was using his slingshot. Why? Because he'd done it a million times before. It had become second nature to him. He could get up and do it almost without having to think about it. Because the more we repeat an activity, the more the structure of our brain actually transforms in order to become efficient at it. The term for it is automaticity. You guys have no idea how long I practiced that word. I'm still not convinced I said it right, but the definition is correct. It's the ability to perform a behavior without thinking about each and every step. It's what occurs when the non-conscious mind takes over. And it means that, when you watch somebody do something that is just amazing to you, and it just seems like, man, you're so good at that. It seems like you have so much self-control in that area. What's actually happening is they're not even using self-control anymore. You ever had that conversation with someone where you're like, man, you're just so self-controlled? And they're like, I guess I don't think of it that way. It's just kind of what I do. I just kind of get up and I don't even just kind of get into this. I just kind of do the thing. And what's real is that David is perfectly prepared for this moment. Like, he had the precise skill needed to execute this task in front of him because he'd built a habit that made it second nature. And in fact, the reality of the situation is that we think Goliath has the advantage, but really, when you analyze it, it's David. In fact, there's many historians and people who analyze war at this time in history, like, this is very clear to them, right? There's one historian, I want to just read you a quote from this guy. He says, Goliath, in this situation, had as much chance against David as any Bronze Age warrior with a sword would have had against an opponent armed with a .45 pistol. Because this is the reality of what, people that use the slingshot, they were called slingers. And if you're thinking gunslinger, you're right, okay? It's like the idea of a sniper, a modern-day sniper. Like, these people had so honed this skill that historians say that they could hit a target the size of a pea from 200 yards away. Okay, David had honed this skill. Why does he run out on the battlefield, right? He's just like, you're such a huge target. I'm so good at this. This is not even fair. You know what I mean? Like, this is ridiculous. Is this allowed? I feel like I'm cheating. You know what I mean? Imagine running out and you're going to fight The Rock in hand-to-hand combat, but you have a pistol. You know what I mean? And you're just running out with a pistol. The confidence you would feel. You know what I mean? Especially if you won the 4-H award 5 years running for pistol shooting, right? You're just like, this is so amazing. I'm about to be the most famous person ever. This is great. You guys, check this out, right? And he's running out, everyone's nervous, and he's like, he just is so confident. Because the truth of the matter is, the best way to make something easy is to do it frequently. And that's what David had done. He had done this over and over and over and over and over again. Have you ever tried to use a slingshot? It's impossible. Okay? My boys got a slingshot because why wouldn't they have a slingshot, right? And we've taken it out and tried to use it multiple times. It is just a recipe for hitting yourself in the face with a rock in a leather pocket. That's what it amounts to, right? There's no aim. It's whatever. We had to try to have a guy show us how that knew how to do it. We couldn't figure it out. It was and he was like, yeah, I've been working on this for a while. He sucked. He was horrible, okay? He was the expert. And he's just like, if you practice, you could be as good as me. And Cohen was just like, not that good. You know what I mean? And he was just like, not worth it. This guy is wasting his life, okay? If this is what all the practice has gone, is missing that target 5 times in a row, and he's the expert, pick a different, I play soccer. Maybe you should try that. In his mind, this guy is just wasting his potential. But the reality is, we've all heard stories of someone who does something incredible, and then afterwards they're being interviewed, and someone's like, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind? And if you've seen these interviews, especially with elite athletes or Olympic athletes, they'll often say, nothing. I wasn't thinking about anything. And if you're like me and you're watching this, you're like, I hate this guy. What do you mean? You weren't thinking about anything. What are you talking about? But they're being genuine in the moment because there was this kind of automatic reaction. Like once they clicked into, what they do, like, their unconscious or non-conscious mind just kind of takes over. And this is what happened with David. And this is frustrating to us when people say things like this to us, because we're just like, well, I don't know how to do it. A lot of times people can't even describe that are really proficient in something and have a habit. They don't even know how to tell you all the steps because sometimes they're checked out during the steps. They're not even consciously thinking about it anymore, which is frustrating when you're trying to get help, right? You're like, how? You seem like you're in shape. What are you doing? And they're like, I don't know. I mean, like I go and I guess I could kind of write something. It's just kind of different. I make it up every day and I just kind of know what to do. And you're like, I hate you. You know what I mean? Like that's what's in your head because you're like, I don't know how to do that. I mean, it's just like, why are you so good looking? And they're like, I'm not even trying anymore. It's just like, I got to be honest with you. I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. I'm accidentally sexy. It's just, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. I mean, I guess there is some work involved, but it doesn't feel like work to me. You know what I mean? And you're just plotting their death. You know what I mean? You're plotting, because it's so frustrating when you hear that from someone, but it's a real thing. And so that's great. Like, how do you design that kind of a habit? Like, where do you start? Like, how do you manage to stick with something? How do you get to where something is so frequent that it becomes second nature that you can say that and it's real and it's honest for you, especially when you've never really done it, or you've done it like, you're like, I've done it twice, okay? Once this year and once a couple years ago, right? It's not really like a habit. And the reality of this is like every habit is a sequence, it's a rhythm. And so your best move to develop a healthy habit is to make the first ritual of your routine easy to initiate. Make the first ritual of your routine easy to initiate, right? Pastor Chris talked about the habit loop last week, that there's this cue, there's this emotional response, right, that we have that kind of stirs up within us, and then we have to respond to it, and that gets us to the reward that we're seeking, right? And so what is the first thing? What is the first thing that, like, man, if you can just place cues around where you can just get yourself to take that first step, what's that thing for you? Listen to how David starts his slingshot sequence. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 40 said he picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream, and he put them into his shepherd's bag. And then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Now, I know you're thinking like, well, the reason that David got good with the slingshot is because he practiced with the slingshot. But practicing with the slingshot wasn't actually the habit that everything was hinged upon. Like practicing with the slingshot for hours on end by yourself in a field, that's hard. You know what's not hard? Walking to a stream and picking up 5 stones and putting them in a pouch. That's the habit. It's that. It's just that first little thing. And he does this every time, over and over and over again. It's what's called a decisive moment. And I like to think of it as like the first domino, right? Like, man, the whole thing is like all these dominoes set up. But like, I know like if I can just get myself to push this first domino, if I can do this one thing, then that's probably going to lead to this other thing, which is going to lead to this other thing. And then it's going to feel natural to kind of just like go ahead and do this thing. And before I know it, I've done the whole thing. This is this process for David. I remember reading an article a while back about Michael Phelps, and he was talking about like his process. He has this elaborate process before he will swim. And I've heard him talk about like, they're like, what are you thinking out there? And he's like, nothing. You know what I mean? Like, because he's just in the zone of things. And the crazy thing was, I read this interview of him and his coach, and they were asking him, what is you do? It looks like you have this whole routine that leads up to that moment where the gun goes off. And he talked about the first thing that he did. And then he started getting fuzzy about what the next thing is. And he's like, I have to do it, to know how to tell you what it is. The coach was like, no, you do this, and then you do this, and then he's like, yeah, oh yeah, I guess I do. Because he's not even thinking about all those things anymore. He's just thinking about the first thing. What's the first domino? Because if I can just tip that one, I'll probably do the next thing, and that'll lead to the next thing, which will lead to the next thing, which will lead to the next thing. And before I know it, I've done the whole thing. And all good habits have a first domino. You know what else has a first domino? All of your bad habits. Have you noticed this? I think the negative side of it is sometimes easier to think of. And you've heard people argue in favor of this, even though they didn't have the domino or decisive moment language. You know, when you're just like, hey, come out with us. And they're like, I can't go out with you tonight. I shouldn't do it. I can't do it, right? What are they saying? Like, that's going to be a domino for me. I'm not going to be able to do it. I know that you're just like, just come out, just sit with us. It's okay. Like, and it's like, I know, but I'm going to sit there and I'm just like, I'm going to hang out. I'm just going to be there. But then like, you know, you guys are going to be having drinks and then I'm going to be like, oh, I'll just have one drink and like, I'll have a sip of yours. And then I end up getting mine. And then that one drink is going to turn into 6 drinks. And if I have 6 drinks, I'm going to end up on the dance floor. Okay. And if I end up on the dance floor, I'm going to find somebody and I'm going to be dancing with them. And if I start dancing with someone, I'm probably going to wake up with somebody I don't recognize. And that's not going to be good for me. Okay. Like I don't want to do that again. Right. It's just like, and I know you're just like, it's just like one little domino. And it's like, yeah, like that's going somewhere, okay? It all starts with the thing, like and they're trying to tell you, and you're like, don't push me into the domino thing. Because I don't want it to happen. Like this last, it was actually yesterday, we were at my nephew's funeral, and there's always carbs, you know what I mean, at funerals. There's so many carbs there, and they had this huge sheet cake, and it was like half eaten, and this lady, this woman who was at the church that it was at, was just like trying to tell one of my sisters, like, take the cake home. My sister was like, I'm not going to take the cake. I'm not taking the cake home. And she's like, just take the cake. You know, you said you liked it. I saw that you had 2 pieces. And now my sister's getting really mad because this lady is keeping tabs on how many pieces of cake she's had, and she's starting to get like really indignant, you know what I mean? Of just like, you're not supposed to be watching my cake intake, like, why are you so nosy, right? And I can see my sister getting worked up, and so I don't stop it because this is awesome. And so I just step back, and I'm like kind of a couple tables away, and this lady's like, just take it, like, you're gonna have people over, and like, you're gonna, you'll have something to give them, and like, whatever. And my sister's getting like all worked up, and she's getting all red, and she's just finally like, I'm not taking the cake, lady! And she just like snaps, and like everyone in this thing just like turns and looks at my sister, and I'm just like, I start laughing because it's such a weird thing to be happening. And then my sister realizes everyone that's looking, she's like, I don't want the cake, okay? And she's like trying to walk away, and it's like, you've already made the scene. Like, you might as well just do the thing. And the lady's like, okay, I was just trying to give her the cake, you know, like, it's just this weird thing. And my sister's just like, I don't know. That's going to be a domino. I'm going to put it in my house, and it's just going to be there, and then it's going to be for other people when they come, and I'm going to tell myself that. But once the cake is in the house on the counter, I'm going to be walking past it on my way out the door. I'm going to see it. And then I'm going to walk past, I'm going to go outside, but then I'm going to know it's there. I'm going to be like, just a little bite of cake would taste so good. The buttercream, it's delicious, you know. And I'm going to come back, and I'm going to get the fork that's stored in the cake, right? Because you never know. And I'm just going to have like a little bit, and then like I'm going to start walking around, and like just one more little, just a little, and then just like a swipe of the frosting. And then I'm going to leave. And then I'm going to do that a couple times. I'm going to come back, and every time I come back, I'm just going to like, oh, there's a little, you know, whatever. And it's just like, and then I'm going to do it. I'm going to be checking the mail, and I'm just going to be kind of like, oh, and like eating this cake that I don't even realize. And then someday, like one of these days, one of my friends is going to come over, and they're going to be like, oh, have you had company? And I'll be like, no. And then they're going to be like, did you eat that whole sheet cake? It's like made for like 40 people. And then I'm gonna have to kill that person. I'm gonna have to kill them, and I'm gonna have to hide them in my basement. I don't want to do that. I'm not taking the cake, right? It's the first domino. And what if you could reverse engineer that? What if instead of just being a victim to all of these bad dominoes and just being like, okay, I'm not gonna push that one, I'm not gonna push that one. What ones are you gonna push? Which ones are you gonna set up? Because you know that if you can just focus on that thing, then that'll press you to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We tend to see habits as the whole sequence, and that can be intimidating. We're like, well, what do I have to do in order to do this and change my life or whatever? And we think of the whole thing, and we're like, I can't do all those things. That's just so much. I'm not going to do it. I might as well just take the sheet cake home. I'm not going to be able to do all of that. I can't do CrossFit 5 times a day. That's not going to be real on a juice fast. It's not going to work, okay? I can't do the whole thing. But the reality is a habit is an entry point, not an end point. It's the first thing, not the whole thing. The habit is the first domino. It's not all the dominoes. And that's the thing that you need to focus on. Because the reality is that the key to everything is really just committing to do the first thing. And so make it easy. Make it obtainable. Make it repeatable. Just initiate the process. You don't need to think about, like, well, I don't have time and I don't have the energy and I don't want to practice the slingshot for like 5 hours. And it's like, we're not going to worry about that. We're not going to do all that. We're just going to walk down to the stream. That's what we're going to do. We're going to walk down to the stream. And when we're down there, we're going to pick up like 5 stones. It's like calm, it's relaxing. And we're going to put them in this pouch, and then we're just going to walk back. That's it. That's all we're going to do. And if that leads to something else, it leads to something else. But here's the way that you're structured. Like, if you find that right first domino, you're going to be like, well, I mean, they're already in the pouch. It's like I went out. It's like the perfect stuff. I mean, I should probably I'm just going to do like a couple throws, right? And then that domino leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next. I don't think David thought about practicing every day. I think David made it a habit to walk down to the stream every day. You know, most of the habits that fill up your life, they require little to no motivation. In other words, like that first domino that sets off the sequence is easy to knock over for you. And once the process is in motion, like you follow it all the way to the end, which is why you can get to the end of something and be like, what happened? So how do you design that first thing? I want to give you just a couple practical tips. And I'll give them all to you at once so you can write them down. I'll talk about kind of how they work. And the first thing I would recommend is create a commitment device. Create a commitment device. And what does that mean? It means trap yourself. Trap yourself. There's a reason why we don't like to make a plan, because then it's like, well, now I got to do it, right? If it's just like an idea, if it's just like a hope, then it's like I'm not held accountable to anything. But like if you make a commitment device and you trap yourself into it, it means that you create a situation in which it'd be easier just to do the thing than to not do it. Like at this point, it just makes sense to do it. Do you want to? No. But it's like I've already done this much. It's like it just makes sense. I'm here, And it could look like a lot of different things. Like, have someone meet you there. I have a friend who wanted to start running. And you think like, well, you just put your shoes on and just run outside of your house. And he's like, I'm never going to do that. So he had a guy that came over to his house, picked him up, took him to a running club. I'm like, do you not have a car? He's like, oh, no, I have a car. There's no way I'm going to drive there. And the commitment device for him is like, the guy comes over. The other guy got up early, came to his house, and is sitting out front. And he's just like, once I know that is happening, it's just like, I could tell him to go home, but all the guilt, right? And it's at that point, I'm already awake. I got to get up. I got to go answer the door. I got to fight with this guy in my front yard in my underwear. It's not worth it. At that point, it's just like he's already coming over. Just drive with him, And the whole way there, we'll talk about how much we don't want to do it. And then once we're there, it's like, well, we're already here. And then we do the run, And that's how he trained for the first 5K that he ran, right? Like, arrange a ride to be somewhere. Give your credit card to a friend. I overspend, right? Give your credit card to someone else. Like, hey, make me ask you for this when I need to spend on it. It's like, well, but then if I did that, I probably wouldn't spend as much. It's like, yeah, that's the idea, right? Like set it up to where your internet browser history automatically goes to your mother-in-law every weekend. You know what I mean? Like, it's a commitment device, right? Like, man, I kicked some destructive habits this year. What did you do? It's a thing called a commitment device. You wouldn't understand. But she has the same maiden name as my wife. It's like, what is the thing that's going to trap you into making it easier for you to do the thing that you know you need to do? The second thing is to prime your environment. What does that mean? It just means set everything up in advance. Like get everything arranged to where you're ready to do what you know you need to do. Like lay your running shoes out, pack your gym bag the night before, right? Like put the breakfast on the counter. We have this, set the alarm, right? So the night before, that's going to go off at lunch that say, read your Bible, right? So you remember to do it at lunch. You don't have to rely on the moment. Like set the stage We have this saying in our house that Gretchen and I say a lot, which is tomorrow morning starts tonight. Tomorrow morning starts tonight. Like, we're tired, we're exhausted. I don't want to get ready for tomorrow, but I know when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be more likely to do what I need to do to be who I want to be if it's already ready for me. Set your environment. And the third thing is to set a minimum. Like when starting something new, it's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. And we tell ourselves the opposite story. Well, if I can't do what I want to do, it just doesn't even make sense to do it, right? And that's a lie that you're telling yourself to keep yourself from getting started, right? Just tell yourself, like, I'm just going to do this for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm going to go all the way there. I'm going to get on the elliptical machine for 2 minutes, right? And then just do 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes. Doing 2 minutes is way better than not doing anything. And what you're actually doing is establishing a pattern, a rhythm that's so much easier to build upon because it exists. Like, I'm just going to read one paragraph. But the goal is a chapter. Who cares? Just say the minimum. I'm just going to read a paragraph. I'm just going to put my running shoes on, right? I may just sit in the living room with running shoes on, but I'm going to put every day, I'm going to put the running shoes on to where eventually my wife is like, it makes no sense. For a month, you've been putting the running shoes on and sitting in the living room. At least walk around the block. Take the dog, something, right? And I might do that, which might build into something because now I've established it. Like, there's a minimum of, like, I'm at least going to do that and make it easy, make it obtainable. I'm just going to tithe 2%. Like, I can't do the whole 10, right? I'm just going to, just this little bit, I'm just going to minimum. That's the minimum for me. And I will just see what happens. And if that's all it is, that's all it is. But now I've established something. I'm one step closer to who I want to be. The point is to start moving in the right direction, to stop planning and stop preparing and stop researching and stop telling everyone you're counting down to almost being about ready. And just push the first domino. Because when it comes to habits, you have to establish it before you can expand or improve on it. So just start. The point is really to master the discipline of just showing up. Just keep showing up. Because once you establish the rhythm, you have no idea what it could grow into. It feels like a small thing, but it really is a big deal compounded over time. There's this verse that's written in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is actually written by David's son. And he writes this, and I think part of where this wisdom comes from is just observing his dad for years and years and years and years. And this is what he says, verse 10, Ecclesiastes chapter 9, he says, whatever you do, do well. For when you go to the grave, there will be no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom. And what he's saying is life is short. And if your whole life is just making plans and never executing them, you will be dead and gone and have nothing but a set of plans for someone else to execute. You'll have the perfect plan that you never did anything with. And I get it, like what you're doing, this thing that's in front of you, this minimum, this rhythm, it seems small and it seems insignificant, it seems meaningless, but if you commit to doing it well, it's not. Because the reality is certain tasks may be contextual, but character is transferable. And that's really what you're building. That little thing that you are etching away at, that thing that you are committing to be consistent with. Like, it may feel like you're just shepherding, and practicing a slingshot, but do it well because you may actually be a king preparing for war and not know it. And that's the miracle. The miracle is that God takes these small moments of devotion and leverages them as preparation to expand his kingdom. You have no idea what that small commitment to just showing up and doing it well is building towards. You're not just taking out the trash. You're not just making your bed. You're not just getting up early. You're not just committing to be generous on a small scale. You're not just doing a 2-minute devotional reading on your lunch break. You are training for something much bigger than you can see right now. And eventually, an enemy or an opportunity is going to present itself like Goliath does to David. And in that moment, a light bulb is going to go off in your brain, and you're going to have this epiphany. I'm ready. I've got this. Everyone else is going to be afraid, and you are going to run full speed towards it because in your mind, you've been preparing for this your entire life. You don't even have to think about the steps anymore. The only thing that crosses your mind is, somebody get me to a stream. Because if I can walk down to the stream, I will initiate a process I've been practicing for years, and something will click into place that makes me incredibly dangerous to darkness. You don't know who you're messing with. You better pray to God there's no streams around here. And you'll ask me afterwards, what were you thinking? And I'll tell you, I don't know. Nothing. And it will seem miraculous. And it will be. What will be miraculous is that God had prepared me in advance for this moment. And I seized it. That's what great stories are built upon. See, every habit is really just an obstacle to get what you really want. I mean, nobody wants the habit itself. You want the outcome it delivers. And it's why it's so crucial to make the first domino easy to push over. And the idea isn't to do easy things, but to make it as easy as possible to do the right things so that you can become the right person. And who is that? It's the person that you know in your soul that God has made you to be. And it is going to be tough at times. So decide who you want to be and commit to getting up and pushing the first domino day after day after day after day. Because you don't maybe know it now, but someday a Goliath will appear on your horizon. And you don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know how big it's going to be. You don't know how much fear it's going to strike in everyone around you. You don't know how chaotic or unsettling it's going to be. You don't know how much is going to be at stake in that moment. But it will happen. And in that moment, you will cling to the structure of your habits. And I wonder, if a Goliath appeared in your life today, would you be ready? Or are you wasting your time? Some people say, just get up and do it. Just fake it till you make it. And I think that's bad advice. Don't fake it till you make it. Face it till you make it. Get up every day and face the thing you don't feel like doing. The battle that you feel like you are not strong enough to fight. Push the first domino again and again. Keep showing up. Keep getting up. Keep pushing and fighting and sharpening your skill set, because you are building the character that will not just sustain you, but it will have a ripple effect on the people around you. David didn't just save his own life that day. He didn't just become who he was meant to be. The weight of an entire people was on his shoulders, and he almost didn't feel it. That's a miracle. But it didn't just happen that day. It had been happening every day. And that's what I want to pray into your life today. That's why we take time to think about what it looks like to shape healthy habits in our lives. Because ultimately it's like, this is not about you just like trying to get some abs. And I hope you do. That's great. You know, it's not about you just like being able to go on an exotic vacation. Like, that's great. I hope you do all of those things. But it's bigger than that. It's not about what you're doing. It's about who you're becoming. It's about like what you're preparing for that you don't even know is on the horizon, but God does. Which is why he's inspired you to become a certain person that requires you to do certain things. He's preparing you. Get ready. Ready yourself for the miracle. And that's what I want to pray into your life today. Would you bow your heads across this room? God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for the life that you've given us. And God, these last couple weeks, probably more than any other time in my life, I am reminded that life is short, it is fleeting, it's unpredictable, which is why you don't just give us life, but you nudge us in the direction of the best way to live. And God, I pray that we would grab a hold of the path that you've placed in front of us, these little things that seem like they're just not that big a deal, but they're leading somewhere. They are building us into someone. And God, there is a moment on the horizon where we are going to need to be who this is making us into. God, may we submit to your process. May we be ready. God, may we master the discipline of showing up again and again and again and again. And God, through our faithfulness, may you faithfully sharpen us so that in the moment of truth, we run towards the battle, not away from it, with a confidence that comes from what you have prepared in us. And there is this sense that like I've already fought so much. I've already overcome so much that I didn't even think I was capable of. Today I'll overthrow this like I have before because God is on my side and he's prepared me for this moment. God, may that be true of each of us. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one domino at a time. In Jesus' name, amen.